The Cromwellian Lieutenant General, Edmund Ludlow, is remembered for what he said of the Burren in County Clare during counter-guerrilla operations there in 1652. He said, "It is a country where there is not enough water to drown a man, wood enough to hang one, nor earth enough to bury him, and yet their cattle are very fat."
Hello, you are welcome back to the Burren Slow Food Festival 2021. We're coming near the end of our journey now, and to see us out in fine style, we're at the Roadside Tavern in Lisdoonvarna. And I'm joined here by Peter Curtin of the Roadside Tavern, which is also the home to the Burren Brewery, and by Noel O'Loughlin, who is founder of the Burren Distillery. So it's the brewer and the distillery here today. And I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, are ye the first brewers and distillers in the Burren?
Well, for me, no. I think there was about 1,000 before me over the last 1,000 years. I mean, since the Cistercians arrived at Kirkham Row, distilling has been pretty consistent until the 18th century, and then that's it. So brewers, yes, there hadn't been any brewers around. So
are you the first brewer?
First brewer.
Well, actually, I'm not the first brewer at all. In fact, back in the good old historical days, like you describe, the native people had a kind of a betwixt and between attitude to the Vikings, because the Vikings were really, really, really good at making beer, and they used to cultivate fields of Bach myrtle on the acid soils at the edge of the Burren, and the caves of the Burren were ideal for storing the beer. And of course the natives sometimes would, "Oh, look at that lovely beer." So it was back to Viking age.
I imagine that might be a surprise to a lot of people to know there's a long history of either distilling or brewing here.
Well, distilling, really, the monastery took it up, and we know from the records that the O'Briens stole the still to smelt it down to impress the Normans, that they had become friendly with the Fitzgeralds in Munster at the time. And so that's why we also know that the Knights Templars on the way to Scotland remarked in their books that they enjoyed the hospitality and the spirits presented to them during their stay in the 14th century.
Yeah, Noel, you mentioned the Cistercians started the distilling here in the Burren. Were they able to get all the ingredients they needed here?
Farming was pretty well, and they brought the O'Kanes down from the north to improve the farming. So the Kanes, first of these Kane families, came down with to manage the growing of grain in Fianna and that grain was continued on in later years by the Gregorys for the Pressy family at Nuns Island, and with that the O'Loughlins of the Burren had taken on the chore of doing the malting at Ballyvaughan and Gort. So that was ran for nearly 80 years on behalf of the distilleries in Galway. Anyway, so the whole thing. So.
The whole development of the Burren wrapped up in the story of distilling. What's it like for the beer then, Peter? Does it come from ingredients of the Burren as well?
No, the beer that I make, I get Irish barley, right? And the beer styles are very traditional. I don't get involved with IPAs and additional hops and all that. And I suppose the beer that we're most noted for here is a beer that I called Euphoria, which is unique to this brewery. It's a slurry of yeast that I captured in the Burren on Connaughton in 2017, and that particular Euphoria beer is a collaboration with Lisa Guinan, the herbalist. You can see some of the herbs here. So it's unique in that it is a triumvirate of yeast strains using herbs, fresh herbs, and absolutely no hops. So it's called Euphoria because it has a mild euphoric effect.
So Peter, are you saying that you're making the beer with a mix of herbs that are from this place?
I'm saying that I'm making the beer from a mix of herbs that are of this place. Like you have yarrow, you have lemon balm. This here is the yarrow, right? Okay. This here is the lemon balm, right? And then you can see the various herbs, right? So and I also use other herbs seasonally. right? One that really excites me is meadowsweet. Like across the way later on, if Ireland was not in this position it's in, the whitethorn flower. So and other times I use nettle early in the season, you know. So I could also use ground ivy. So there's all these kind of herbs. Hops were a late addition historically to the world of beer. Hops was a bit like with the Cistercians coming in from Rome and the Roman Church. It's a bit like hops essentially are the opposite to slow food, because it coagulates all this into a kind of a corporate world. The local herbs is really where it's at.
Amazing. So no matter when you come in to the Roadside Tavern, what you're getting is a taste of the place at that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't appreciate you could have that kind of unique sense of taste about a beer.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. So the only place you can get Peter's beer is in Peter's pub, Noel. What about the whiskey? How widely available will that be?
Peter is complimentary. It's absolutely brilliant to hear Peter's story like that, because we're tired of everybody duplicating, making tons and tons. The problem for Peter in the beer end of it is, like myself with our whiskey end of it, it's to be a limited supply. And it probably won't be there won't be enough to go around the country, and so people will have to come to Lisdoonvarna if they want to taste it. That's probably the Peter's end of it. Our end of it is we have to grow our own barley, we have to malt it, and like Peter, it's a similar problems. We can't produce vast quantities of whiskey because the barley and the flow malting system we go through is tedious. It takes 4 to 5 days to germinate a batch of barley, and then then we have to kiln it, dry it down to 4 or 5 or 6% moisture. And first we had to generate the moisture by steeping it in water. So it's a very long, drawn-out process for making a whiskey, and the whiskey most of all.
And what's the benefit of going through all that process? Like you say, it's tedious. What's the...
So there's two. Firstly is we're getting a very refined spirit. And firstly is our mash gives us a nice balanced 8 to 9% alcohol straight away from our mashing, and our mashing is a 4.5 to 5 hour procedure. If we were commercially doing it, that would be a 2 hour in and out procedure. The same with our fermentation. Our fermentation can go on 6 days sometimes, and industrial fermentation is 3.5 days.
That question Noel's touching on there, Peter, or not touching on, he's going right into it. The heritage that's captured in the product, the heritage of the burn or of the craft. How important is that for you when you're putting together your beer?
The heritage. Well, look, it's absolutely everything. You know, the big word that's bandied about these days, and people are gone down into the science of it, is terroir. You know, so when you come in here, you're going to sample a unique drink, and we don't use the word lightly. There is no other place that has their own yeast strains that is brewing beer with these herbs, you know. And isn't that one of the reasons why you travel to a place, is to have an intimate local experience with local?
How does it fit with you in this whole long history and heritage of the burn and the people in it?
Well, I mean, it fits absolutely perfectly, because I'm a bit like, you know, I'm more like a willow tree. I'm organic. I remember Nicky Considine from out the road here, who is related to the same Clancy's, taking an orchard down in Glenina of apples, and my mother coming and taking the apples locally, and people making their own bread and creating their own food. So slow food is supporting indigenous populations of people doing food and other things. So it's front and centre.
It was all actually captured a long time ago, wasn't it, in the Brehon laws? What we call sustainability now was very much written in to the Brehon law here. Is that right?
Well, it was, but the laws were people's law. The people dominated. The chieftain or those could be got rid of. So basically, it was people power. And the thing with around the Burren here, people learn how to live like off the sea. My aunt who worked here in a restaurant back in the old days, she went down and picked mussels and barnacks and everything, and we were fed periwinkles were a thing, and it was fish on a Friday. And people they grew crop for themselves just to keep everybody going, and they killed the pig. They killed the pig on the you killed it one week, the next farmer killed it the next week, and you shared. So this it's probably away from what you're getting on with, but sharing was more of a part of the part of what the Burren was all about, sharing and living.
It's a big question, Peter, but in what way would you see yourself now as a guardian of that heritage or a custodian of that heritage?
Well, well, it's an easy question for me to answer. It's a big question, but it's easy for me to answer because essentially it's my middle name. My passion in life is this place that we live in. I was one of the people who introduced slow food to Clare. My wife took up the running, and I am totally aware of my heritage, of who I am in County Clare. I can trace my ancestry all the way back into the O'Connors, which the O'Loughlins would have come out of the O'Connors. The O'Connors came out of the O'Neills, and then that brings you back to a mixture of my heritage background, which is Two-Headed Dannan and Miletian. So I'm very much aware of where I am from, and I intend to keep it like that in this place and keep sustainability a core to who and where we're living. And it doesn't mean that we're insular or isolated in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely. Noel, it's the same for you. I know that the entire driving force behind the Burren Distillery is about honouring that heritage. Is that fair?
Correct. It's about keeping whiskey. There's a little bit more. All the whiskey is being made at the moment in Ireland, and there's 38 possible distilleries and 24 new distilleries in England. They all have the one thing in common. They're not reflecting the original product. The original product really stopped in 1937. But that's commercialisation, globalisation, because we need volume, and you can't have volume of this. That's the problem. You cannot have this in volume because, like the beer, there isn't. It's not a commercial. It's very hard to make a big commercial deal out of it. And so what I'm trying to do is to protect the heritage, protect the whiskey, and let people know that this was the whiskey that was here in 1907. This is the whiskey that was here in the 15th century, 16th century. That it's not the stuff that I can make a big volume of. So because that's why the oak was needed. You needed to show exactly what the product, and there was no way any of the new ones were going to do that. So somebody had to protect the Burren was always going to be the place where things were hidden away anyway. Yeah. So I'm hidden away, and he shouldn't be hidden in Lisdoonvarna because it's.
No, but it's fascinating because. It's literally like having a time machine for terroir to say that Noel is allowing the world to experience a whiskey that would have been tasted back in the time the Cistercians were here in the 1200s. Literally is what he's doing, and that's a fascination. People love that idea.
It's an absolute privilege to listen to the two of you talk about what you're doing here, why you're doing it, the effort you're going to kind of honour that heritage and make sure me and people like me can get that story and taste that story. It's absolutely incredible. So I think I might be here for another while chatting with these two gentlemen. For now though, that is the end of the Burren Slow Food Festival 2021. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Roadside Tavern, and I hope you've enjoyed our food and drink tour around the Burren, meeting all the wonderful people who together make this place such a unique and dynamic food destination. So for the last time, I'm going to hand you over to local musician Pat Dowling, who will play us out on piano from Burren Slow Food Festival 2021.